Welcome to the Business, Finance, and Comedy Show. I am a guy surrounded by money. Today I'm interviewing Ricky Kelser, who runs Income School, and Ricky caters to people new to building websites, and his methods probably differ to mine. Let's start with what got you into niche websites and when did you start seeing success with them?
Yeah, I started with these websites several years ago, back in like 2015. And it's because a really good friend of mine had started his own. He made a blog about photography and it did really, really well. So he started kind of dabbling in buying and selling sites and starting sites and decided he wanted to start teaching it. And I was his friend that just finished a business degree and was interested in entrepreneurship and wanted to kind of work on the side. So I got into it because my friend wanted to start teaching it. So I got into it to help him. But in the process, I started building my own websites as well. And so I've been doing it for several years now, since 2015. And but that's what got me into it, is because my friend was doing it. And um, about 3 years after that, I quit my job, and that's what I've been doing full time ever since.
As I understand it, you encourage people to develop info products. How are those types of sites doing in the latest Google updates?
There's a mix. So I was actually just looking at comments on a YouTube video I published, where I talked a little bit about this. And so a lot of people commenting are saying, no, Google's awful. These websites that you're teaching people how to make, mine got destroyed. And then other people are saying, mine's fine. Or a few people have said even they've only seen positive benefits. I think most of these websites have suffered in the last year from Google. Um, and so it is a struggle, but some of them are doing incredibly well. And I think the ones who have their own product to sell, they tend to do a little bit better. Oftentimes because when you're starting to sell a product, now all of a sudden there's a little bit more legitimacy to your business. If you have online reviews of your products and stuff, it's a lot easier for Google to trust the source of all of the content on the website.
On the scale of teaching people how to DJ, to teaching people how to DJ on vinyl, in Antarctica, what type of niching down do you suggest people do? I mean, not everything would work as an info product, right?
That is absolutely true. Um, Probably somewhere more like teaching people how to DJ on vinyl. um, Probably not in Antarctica, right? Not that far niche down, but DJing, or even like teaching people how to DJ. I mean, you can get away with that for sure, but usually you're going to want to pick some angle. So whether it's teaching people how to DJ on vinyl or teaching people how to, like, a particular style of DJing. Do you want to DJ um, high school reunion dances for people who graduated in the 90s and 2000s? And so that's one style of DJing. Um, you know, I could see kind of sort of picking your thing. You could also do like DJing equipment could be kind of your approach. And maybe you talk about DJing as a skill a bit, but mostly you're focused on the equipment. Um, I'm just kind of somewhere around there, not so specific that you just like there's nobody that wants to learn about it.
How do you decide what information you give out for free and what information goes into the info product?
That's a fantastic question. Usually, I'm not too worried about giving away information for free. I give away a lot of information, and then what I like to do is, like, what I put in the info product is more about process and tools and packaging that information in a way that's again kind of goes back to process. So, a lot of times people, I mean, all the information I want to know about most topics, I could find on the internet if I know what to look for and I search hard enough. But having somebody just kind of show me step by step, here's what you need to know, and here's the order you need to do things in, has value in and of itself. And so usually it's the processes, and then sometimes, tools that can go along with it that can help do some things for people. if you can solve their problem for them, it's even easier than teaching them how to solve it. And so people will pay for that too.
What do you recommend in terms of pricing and why, and also what other sources of revenue do you recommend niche websites have?
So for pricing, it this is one of the hardest things in just in business in general is pricing, unless there's an industry or there's like already a marketplace for something. So it's easy to set a price when there's something really similar that you can compare it to that's on the market. So usually what I'll do is I'll kind of start by seeing what are people's alternatives. So if there's an info product that I have, if the alternative is the only really other option is they could go buy a book or they could search the internet and find it. Well, the book maybe costs like $10, but the book is substantially less helpful than maybe my videos that can help show people more than just tell them in words. And so, and then you have to take into account the fact that like people tend to value courses more than they value books. So they might spend $10 on a book, but $50 on a course that covers the same information. Um, so there's some of that, but a lot of times I'm just looking at like what are people's alternatives? They can do nothing and live with whatever the issue is that they have, or they can learn about it elsewhere, or they can pay for a service that solves this problem for them, but it costs a lot more. And then I just use that to kind of figure out where I'm at. So for our own info product, there are other courses out there that do similar things to ours, and they range anywhere from about what ours costs to over $1,000. And so we're priced pretty aggressively. We're kind of on the lower end. And it's kind of nice. But when we started, there weren't that many other courses out there teaching what we teach. And so we started a little bit less expensive and just left room, and we just let people know. And this is another kind of easy way um, to play around with the pricing a little bit is just know that you anticipate the price going up and launch your information product with like a introductory pricing is what we'll usually call it. Like, this is introductory pricing. It's not going to stay this low forever, but we don't state exactly how long or exactly how much it's going to go to. We'll figure that out depending on how well it sells at the current price. Then in terms of like other ways to monetize, I mean, there's a lot of options. For a lot of blogs, we will recommend, on each sites that people have some ads, but the probably the easy option for sites that aren't big yet has been Ezoic, but I've been less and less happy with the ads experience, and I'm just seeing sites that are just too flooded with ads. Um, but there's some really good platforms. Once your site's big enough, Mediavine is fantastic, and they'll place ads on your site. And then we do affiliate marketing too. So we'll recommend products that people can buy, and if they use our link, we make a commission. So those are kind of the bread and butter for a lot of niche websites. But then beyond that, I mean, we've helped people with physical products. They set up like an Etsy or Shopify kind of situation, or drop shipping. Any sort of physical product kind of situation can work pretty well. I love info products because they're infinitely scalable. I can sell 100 and it doesn't cost me much more than selling two, or I can sell 100,000. So that's why I love info products so much, though. It's just I can sell as many as people want.
What are some of the main aspects of building niche websites do you think people struggle with the most?
I think one of the biggest struggles comes from um, creating content that's really helpful and really compelling and that's going to do well. Right now, especially with what Google's been doing, Google's really trying to differentiate between kind of mass-produced spammy content. There, for years now, people have been kind of spinning other people's content. So you take stuff other people have written, you reword it either yourself or using just a computer tool to do it. You reword it and you just republish it. And that doesn't add anything of value to the internet. So Google's been working for a couple of years to try to pick out content that they consider helpful and sometimes the original content creator, their site isn't the one that gets picked and somebody else copied them. But Google's trying to kind of figure out what content is the best. And lately, a lot of niche websites have gotten caught up in Google trying to sweep a lot of the unoriginal content from their search results. And so the search results to a lot of people are feeling a little bit less helpful because there's less of that blog content being shown. But at the same time, a couple of years ago, there would be on the first page of Google, I would see 5 blog posts, and if you clicked into them, they all said the same thing, slightly different words, but they all said the same thing. And that's not really helpful either. So I think one of the biggest struggles people have is understanding what does it actually mean to create content that is original and helpful? Because I hear all the time from people, my content's really good. Everybody says that. My content's really good. I wrote it all myself. It's not AI written content. It's just I wrote it. But I think that if they were to be able to objectively see it, um, maybe the way I would look at it, being as experienced as I am, or, if they could see, they would realize that their content, they put a lot of work into it, but that doesn't mean that content was actually that helpful or original for that matter. So I think that's one of the biggest struggles is putting something out there that's actually original.
Do you still recommend that people do pages for long-tail search queries, and if so, what are the best places to find them?
Yes. What I don't recommend is that people focus only on long tail queries. So long tail queries are great because, there's usually very little competition. And so you can write content that quickly ranks for the people that are searching for that one specific thing. And that does benefit the rest of your site too. When you get some content that ranks high, it kind of levels up the authoritativeness of your site. So that's a good thing. But the problem is that if we only focus on those long tail keywords, then we're often not talking about, and we're not answering a whole bunch of search queries that are important to the topic. We're kind of answering a bunch of random questions around a topic, but not covering the real meat of the topic. And so we don't build any topical authority. And that just is having authority on a topic because you've really covered it exhaustively. So now I strongly recommend to people to have a good mix, to mostly to look at a topic, or, if we're talking about DJing, teaching people to DJ on vinyl, we might have kind of a category of content on the website that does talk a little bit about the right equipment that they need. But within that, we're also going to have, some very kind of more specific groups of articles that are very closely related to each other. And we tend to call those clusters. And all these articles closely relate to each other. And we just cover the topic instead of just saying like, well, here's my favorite setup for, vinyl DJing, or best setups under $500, and you write one review article. Instead, we're going to write several articles that kind of go through the different decision points and the different kinds of equipment that are available to you and all that kind of stuff, and make sure we cover the topic more exhaustively. But in that mix, I want to make sure that some of the search queries I respond to are kind of those long tail keywords. So where do we find those? Really, a couple of lots of different ways. One way that I find them is I just cover, like when I look at a topic that I want to cover and I dive down and kind of find those groups of articles I want to write, I then just start looking for what are all the main questions that people are asking or likely to be asking around that. And just some of them are going to be long tail. And usually we can tell what's a long tail question fairly intuitively if we know much about our topic. But where do we find all the questions people are asking? There's a lot of different ways. You can just do a Google search and see what Google suggests and the people also ask. That's one way to see what other related questions are being asked. There's a free tool online called Answer the Public. It's been around for a long time, but it's up to date and does a great job, where you can put in kind of a topic or even a fairly specific topic and it will show you lots and lots of questions that people ask on the internet around that topic, questions that cover that topic. There are lots of keyword research tools that are paid. Ahrefs and SEMrush are both good tools that will give you good lists of closely related topics and stuff. I just don't trust any of their search volume numbers. And so I more use my own knowledge and understanding of the topic to determine what's long tail and what's not, um, rather than relying on numbers that they come up with, just because I know their models are based on they're based on a survey of data, and long tail keywords by definition are not searched very often. So in a survey, statistically, they're always going to be either heavily under or overrepresented. And so the numbers are just going to be off. So anyway, that's how I find them.
You recommend people go on podcasts, I think. If so,
Mhm.
what is a good way for people to go on podcasts? Do you suggest people just cold email podcast hosts, and at what point, etc.?
Yeah, I think starting with the kind of at what point, if you've created a website, I probably wouldn't worry too much about this until you've published like 30 articles. I just, and that's a little bit of an arbitrary number that I use, but somewhere in the 30 to 50 range. At this point, you've talked about enough things in your industry on your website to actually probably know quite a bit, because now you've done research for those articles. But also, the website has enough content to where it looks like you're not just someone who started up last week and is just trying to get on a podcast right away. So you're going to look a little bit more authoritative when you have a reasonable amount of content. Now, how do we do this? There are a lot of ways. I think cold emailing podcast hosts can work for sure. I get emails from people that invite me onto their show, partly because in this industry, I'm a figure now, so people invite me directly. But going the other way around, what I would recommend to people is to start with fairly small podcasts, fairly new podcasts. Um, just go looking around. I mean, you can open up a podcast player and search for podcasts, and then scroll down toward the bottom, the ones that aren't showing up at the top yet, um, and find some that are fairly new. Podcasters are regularly looking for people to interview, because podcast episodes tend to be more engaging if it's more than one person. So, um, so yeah, oftentimes they'll see it as a favor, like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to have you on. And if you're both small, it's it's not weird for them to be interviewing a fairly new blogger. And then you just work your way up from there. So once you've been on some podcasts, it's not too hard. Now there is a tool that I've used and I use sometimes. It's called Pod Match, and it's kind of like a dating site for podcasting. So it takes like people that want to be interviewed and people that are looking for people to interview, and you just create a profile and fill in some fields about, here's what I'm looking for, and here are the kinds of shows I do, here are the topics I cover, and it kind of pairs you up and helps you find people that could be a good fit. And you can just kind of sync up with people and schedule to be on a podcast right there. But I don't think they have a free tier anymore on that service. So if you're just starting out and you're not in a position to pay for those matches, then honestly, cold emailing, um, starting with fairly small podcasts, it can be a good way to go. Likewise, you can do the same thing with small YouTube channels. Someone started a YouTube channel in your industry, great. Like, just reach out to them and say, hey, how could I help you? I'm a blogger in the same industry. What would be helpful to you? And just offer to be helpful. And people are more receptive when they feel like you're trying to help them than when they feel like you're asking them to help you.
Aside from Google and YouTube, what ways do you suggest people drive traffic to their website?
Yeah, aside from Google and YouTube, um, it depends a lot on what your industry is, but Pinterest is working pretty well right now. Not all topics do well on Pinterest. It does tend to be more female heavy in terms of users, whereas YouTube is more male heavy in terms of users. And so um, it's a little bit different tone, but Pinterest is basically like a search engine that's actually easier to manipulate than Google is. If you tag your pins appropriately and stuff, like you can get them to rank well for lots of different searches. So there's some really good strategies for Pinterest that are working really well right now. So if you're in one of those spaces, that works. I do like using now other social media like Facebook and Instagram, um, but they don't tend to drive a ton of traffic. They tend to be pretty good for, I mean, you'll get some engagement through them. Usually I'll just repurpose content I'm making for YouTube and repurpose them on those other platforms because there's slightly different groups of people. There's a lot of overlap, but there's some people that are on Facebook but don't really go to YouTube much. My wife is one of those. She never used to watch my videos, and then we started publishing them on Facebook. She started watching them, and now she watches them on YouTube. But for a long time, she didn't because she just wasn't there. So it can be helpful in that way, but it can also be a really helpful way to just drive more engagement overall. Um, I do like as a blogger, I think it's fantastic to to go and join a bunch of like groups on Facebook and just participate in those groups. If you can join as a page that's like a business page for your blog, great. A lot of groups don't like that. So just you can just join as an individual, as a person. But just being really helpful in those groups can can do a lot. And then again, if you do it under your brand name, that helps people click over to your page. Um, but also occasionally you'll have opportunities to link to content that you've made, or at least to just allude to content like, oh, I recently wrote an article about that for my website. And then you don't even have to link to it right away. Oftentimes, if people are interested, then they'll follow up and say, can I get a link to that? I'd like to know. And because, oh, again, like a lot of Facebook groups have rules, the admins are like, no self promotion. So then you could take it to a Facebook message and say, yeah, well, I'll DM you that. So that's one of my favorites too, is just participating in wherever people in your industry are online, participate. That could be Reddit and Quora, but Facebook groups is another great place.
Let's say I was passionate about unicycling, nothing interests me less, but let's say I was passionate about unicycles and wanted to build an authoritative website about unicycles. What are some strategies that you could recommend for me to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I would start by thinking about like what what's the angle that I want to take? Do I want to talk, I mean, with unicycles, it's probably already specific enough that we don't need to niche down a lot. But a lot of times you could make a whole website just about the products, the gear. Um, in the case of unicycles, you might end up just kind of covering a bit of everything. Um, but what I would do is I would start by uh, trying to identify, and you could use Google Trends for this, but like, what are the main really high level things that when people are searching for unicycles, what are the main high level things that they're trying to accomplish? Are they looking to buy one? Are they looking to learn how to ride one? And what are the main use cases? Are people, I mean, I remember when I was in college, like there were legitimately people on my college campus um, that would ride around like campus on their unicycle, just like I would ride around on a bicycle, but they would ride around on a unicycle. Or they want a unicycle for the novelty of it and to learn to ride it and ride around. Are they, what's kind of the main driver behind those people? Because then you can identify what questions they're likely to be asking. Um, you know, Frankly, I'm probably going to start a lot with kind of the beginner questions, um, because those are going to get asked the most. The people that are considering or learning about unicycles, but like there's a lot more people that are interested in and learning about unicycles than there are people that are very experienced unicyclists, if that makes sense. And that's true in like every niche. There's a lot more people that are researching the topic superficially than there are people that are really into it. So we often start with those questions that are most superficial, Yeah, how fast can a unicycle go? That might be something that an AI can answer, but if somebody's asking that question, like, why are they asking that? Um, and so then we could write an article that covers the answer to that question, how fast unicycles can go. But in that same article, we're probably going to go in more in depth and talk about other things about unicycles, just their practicality. Um, you might talk about like how much they weigh, how fast they can go, um, how hard are they to ride. You might cover a few of those things in just one article, just because no one of those things is like any one of those questions could maybe be answered just by Google's AI, right? But putting it all together, it's going to turn it into a pretty good beginner's guide for somebody who's just considering it. So, um, but that's where I'll start, is usually those more beginner questions.
Who thinks up the sketches at the beginning of income school videos?
Really, those come from anyone who's got an idea. So sometimes, I mean, there are several that Jim, who was my co-founder, there's several that he came up with. He just said, I have a great idea. There are other times where I said, hey, I have a great idea. There's one where he was about to rebuild the deck off of the back of his house. And it's tall. They have a walkout basement. So it's like a full story off the ground, full floor off the ground. And they were going to replace all of the decking. So I said, hey, what if we like cut a hole in your deck and I fall through the hole? And I applied it to the concept for a video, and then we went and did it. So um, sometimes him, sometimes me, and then there have been several since then where it's just anybody that's got an idea. um, they just bring it up and they say, and they kind of pitch it to the. We've got a small team, but we've got a team, so they'll kind of pitch it and give a vision for what they have in mind, and we just run with it from there.
As far as YouTube, how have your strategies on the Income School YouTube channel changed over the years, i.e., are you optimizing videos differently than what you did a few years ago, and how?
Yeah, the strategy's changed a little bit, some of it out of necessity, but um, you know, little over 3 years ago, Jim, the co-founder, he moved. For family reasons, they decided to move, and it's like a 10-hour drive from where we are. So we started having to just film separately. So he'd film a video for 1 week, and I'd film the video for the next week. But that meant that the videos had to change, and so we didn't have the same. We couldn't do like the same banter very well. We couldn't the little intros. We started pulling in other team members and stuff. Also, out of necessity, we've included other team members in large part just because I can't be the one person everybody knows on YouTube, because I just can't make all the YouTube videos all the time, because we have the Income School channel, but we have one called Channel Makers that talks about YouTube. Um, so we started relying on team members as well, which at first is hard because people really like certain personalities. And so, when we'd bring another team member on Income School, the video wouldn't do as well. But with time, people come to like and trust those new team members. But we've also gotten a lot more methodical with time. So we put a lot more thought into trying to um, trying to make a video compelling, and when we can, to try to put in a little bit of story. It's hard in informational videos, but we're still working on that. And then right now, I'm part of my strategy right now is I'm planning. I haven't done much of this yet, but this week I'm starting work on some projects where I'm going to be making videos that are more documenting aspects of projects I'm working on. So whether they're my own websites, or I'm going to be working on some websites from some of our viewers and some of our members, trying to help them diagnose things that are wrong with them. And so the idea there is to take the concept of like reviewing someone's blog, but take it a step way further, to like review it, but then create an action plan, work on it, fix certain things, maybe over the course of several videos, each one focusing on a specific element, each one with its own little story arc, but with an overarching project. I mean, if you think about like a home remodeling TV show, kind of like that, but for a blog. Um, and I think that that will do a better job of being really engaging and illustrating the things I want to teach, but less of me just talking at a camera, which is what I've done for a long time. And it's kind of the easy way to teach information, but it's really a lot more engaging. And I think we'd get more overall engagement and be more helpful to people overall if we can just make the videos like that more engaging. So storytelling and project work, that's where I'm headed.
Have you tested AI content and have you had any success with that, or have the people in your course?
Yes. We've tested it a little bit. Um, we ran some earlier tests, I don't know, about a whole year ago, where, I mean, objectively, the AI content, even with Nathan kind of curating it, I wrote an article and he wrote an article on the same prompt. And my article really was just substantially more helpful. But we've also gotten better at prompting and refining those articles too. So we are using AI content a little bit to, especially just to help speed up the process, as well as help sometimes with creativity, just because we're creating so much content. Sometimes it can be helpful to come up with ideas when mentally we're getting tired. So it allows us to do more. We're using it a little bit for content repurposing. So it can take something that we've created. So it's using our ideas, even our stories, and then crafting social media posts. Or one thing I want to play with is taking a video transcript and using the information I shared in the video, but letting the AI craft a blog post that's not just like a summary of the video, but a legitimate blog post that relies on the same ideas and the same information, but is just crafted to be a blog post. So um, we've got members in our community that have been fairly successful with it, and we've been running some tests, done some beta testing in our community with um, a tool that was developed by one of our members for content repurposing to take a blog post and generate social media content out of it. So it can be pretty effective. We just like to make sure that the human element and the making sure that we create something original in the content that we publish. And so usually that means that there is a strong human element associated with it, either, clearly guiding the AI or adding to what the AI has done.
Where can people follow you?
The best places on YouTube. We're fairly active now. We're doing better about Instagram and Facebook um and the website. Like, I teach blogging, but I don't write that much for the Income School website. And I'm going to try to be better about that. So the Income School YouTube channel is where I'm most active outside of our paid membership called Project 24. And then I mentioned the Channel Makers YouTube channel. That's where we teach all of our YouTube strategy. Um, Between those two channels, you're going to stay up to date on everything that we're working on.
I would like to thank Ricky for the interview. People watching can like, comment, share, subscribe and whatever else you do to videos if you're watching in the future. If you don't find notifications annoying, you can turn notifications on.